Hello, you beautiful cycling fans, and welcome back to another A1 Tour de France show special. So we're 3 weeks in, and it is all done and dusted. It's been an amazing Tour de France, and today I'm going to have a look back at Ewan, who took victory today. I'm going to have a look back at overall winner Egan, Bernal, what it means for Colombia to have their first ever Grand Tour winner. Where does this leave Geraint Thomas in the Sky pecking order now with 4 Grand Tour stage winners on the current INEOS roster? Gonna have a look at Wiggins sauced on the back of the motorbike, how other teams need to raise their game, what it means for Luke Rowe to not be on the Champs-Elysees, and will we have a first ever Colombian World Tour cycling team? So we got a busy show ahead. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. So our stage today, they call it the Sprinters World Championships, race down the Champs-Elysees. We finished off with Ewan taking the win, Dylan Groenewegen second, and Bonifacio taking third. Bonifacio, a little bit unexpected on the podium, but after 3 weeks of racing, it's, the form book is nearly out the window. It's hard to know how some of these sprinters have come through the Alps and the Pyrenees. I had myself a little wager on today's stage on Paddy Power. I got Sagan, I think, at 6-1, and then I got Caleb, I'm gonna say, at 15-8. Look, it was big money stuff there. The tenner on Sagan, it was kind of my bet that I was looking to come in. As I said in yesterday's show, heart said Sagan, head said Caleb. So I went with a €10 on Sagan at 6-1 and a $5 on Caleb to hedge. So Caleb won and I ended up breaking even. So very exciting stuff there. My hedging betting strategy, look, it worked well. It's I think if you know your cycling, and especially if you're listening to these sort of daily podcasts and you're keeping abreast of your cycling, you probably know a lot more than the bookmaker, and it's quite easy to pick out those smart little bets. Like, if you had played a little bet like Groenewegen, Caleb, and then Viviani, a $5 on each of them, you're almost guaranteed to take the win out of the 3 of them, and you're going to come out ahead. So it very easy to beat the bookies on the cycling stuff, especially on stages like that. They're a little bit formulaic, and we have a good idea. We know the breaks never. Has a break ever stayed away on the Champs-Elysees? I don't think so. Not that I can remember anyway. I seen Greg Van Avermaet had a good ping off there late, but it shows you how fast these lead-out trains are going, because Van Avermaet had a good ping off it, and we know the power he has. He's an insane horse. He looks a bit chunky this year. I don't know what the story is on me. He definitely looks chunky, and that CCC Sprata kit's doing nothing for him. He was an absolute hitter with BMC, and he would have been one of my favourite riders, but I don't know, he looks a bit tired and old and withered or something this season. He needs to get himself on that red light therapy. He's faded, but anyway, he's still got that big horsepower. So he took a flyer, I think 4 or 5k to go, but sure, it was so easily shut down, it was untrue. Some sprinters had bad luck, I suppose we'll call them, for to use a disparaging phrase, we'll call them second tier sprinters. Michael Matthews and Sonny Colbrelli both had mechanicals inside the last, gonna say, 15k or so. Colbrelli got back in. He had a nice little domestique to drop back for him. Vincenzo Nibali, 11 Grand Tour podiums for Vincenzo Nibali, the best GC rider of a generation. Chris Froome included. You'd have to say Vincenzo Nibali at the moment. Froome obviously has a lot more chapters to write in that legacy. I think Froome's 4 Tour de France wins and a Vuelta win. Yeah, it's pretty hard to. Nibali's consistency, 11 podiums, is insane, and when you throw in your Milan-San Remos into that equation, I just tip it to Nibali over Froome. But Froome's back. Froome's back. Froome's back on the trainer. He's back with one leg. You'd have to wonder if that's doing his recovery any good. It looks like it's brutal, painful. He's one leg on a sponge or some shit, and he's got the other leg pedalling away. More for the cameras, I'd say, or maybe for his morale. I've been that soldier myself. I remember breaking a collarbone in racing in Canada. I was racing in Florida when I broke the collarbone. I was rehabbing in Toronto and going back to Toronto, getting surgery in like a day after the surgery, 2 days after the surgery, back on the turbo trainer. I couldn't hold the bars, sitting upright, using some sort of shelf to prop my arm up, back on the turbo trainer. I can barely turn the leg, still road rash to fuck all over, and just looking back, like, what benefit are you getting out of them sessions? Like, so mentally challenging to get 15 minutes in that extreme pain. Using some sort of opioid-based painkiller at the time, Oxycontin, I think it was, highly addictive. I was in shocking pain after the surgery. The surgery was 20 times worse than, I've had a lot of crashes in my day, but the surgery from that was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. It was 20 times worse than the actual break. I'd be timing my painkiller, so I'd say my next lot would be like 2 o'clock, and I'd be literally counting down the minutes until 2 o'clock, and I'd be in 9-10 out of 10 pain. At like a minute to 2, I'd take that at 2 o'clock, boom, gone. Don't know how much of that was placebo, don't know how much of it was the extremely addictive, potent opioid that is Oxycontin, but who knows. Nice little drug, a nice little drug indeed. Geraint Thomas, a great iconic image of Geraint Thomas crossing the finish line hand in hand with Egan Bernal. It was like a handing over from, don't want to call him a veteran, but the experienced to the new era, the new generation. It was symbolic, and it was also a mark of just how classy a guy Geraint Thomas is. He's the defending champion, and there was never a doubt that he was going to go on the attack yesterday. He done what all good pros do. Good soldiers. He fell in line and he helped his teammate out, Bernal, helped him out on the road. But as we've seen from interviews and podcasts, Geraint Thomas has a podcast. I didn't even know that. He was co-hosting it with Luke Rowe during the tour. I didn't hear anything about it. Very quiet. The only ones I heard that had a podcast were Wiggins and Eurosport. That was great value. And obviously the Armstrong Move podcast was very good. And then there's some, the cycling podcast, the Rafa one, whatever that's called. Like, that's pure turd. Like, it's bad shit. It's bad. Like, the guys they're doing their best, but it's very sterile. It's very British. It's not for me. I'm sure there's an audience there that enjoys that, but I'd struggle to listen to 5 minutes of it. It's too polished and it's too proper British. But yeah, I think Wiggins is great because he doesn't take himself too seriously. He obviously has tons of experience and brings a perspective that's very difficult to get. He brings the Grand Tour winner perspective to a debate, which is almost impossible to get in any debate. Kelly, like the coverage on Eurosports, it's world class with Kelly as well. He's brilliant. But anyway, I'm going on, if you're a regular listener, you'll know I do go on these segues. The role of G within the team now, I think he's got another Grand Tour in him. It's going to be tough because it's a stacked roster, and Froome, Thomas, Carapaz, Bernal, Brailsford's got to play cute who goes where. But I think G has another one. If you think about, like 2 years ago, G had, I think, 11th or 12th was his best ever GC position. He had no results of note. He goes and wins the Tour de France last year. We were all waiting for him to blow up all the way along, pretty much the same as we were with Alaphilippe this year, where we were saying this can't last. And then he goes and wins on Alpe d'Huez, and he obviously goes on and wins the Tour de France. And his life must have changed. He went from, normal guy, G, kind of low-key, playing second fiddle, to Port, Wiggins, Froome through the years, to all the attention and all the spotlight going on top of him. So that's got to be tough for Thomas. And it was a big year of media obligations for him. It was a big year getting used to being Tour de France champion. He had some crashes. Preparation wasn't good. So bearing all that in mind, to come back and play second in the Tour de France, his second best ever result, it's pretty remarkable. And I think he's got more to come. I think he's got to do it carefully. I really think he's a company man. I can't see him leaving INEOS, but I was going to say he'd be better off leaving INEOS, but then you look at just how Landa's performed since leaving, Richie Porte's performed since leaving. Like, they all left because they thought they could go and win Grand Tours when they left, but it's proved very difficult, and INEOS is a well-oiled unit, so most probably his best bet is there, and some smart man management from Portal and Brailsford as to where they send Thomas and how he prepares for races and that type of thing. I thoroughly enjoyed today's stage. I know it's a bit of mucking around. It's the late start, and I'm finding myself now. I'm back in Dublin, by the way. Came up this morning. I was only down. I was down to 2 nights in Kinsale. Beautiful part of the world. If anyone's not from Ireland, get down and check it out. Beautiful bike riding around there, all around the Wild Atlantic Way, out like Kinsale down towards Clonakilty and stuff. It's amazing. Out around the old head of Kinsale, some of the most picturesque and beautiful riding in the country. That's well worth checking out. Last week actually I was out in Mayo as well, and that's some beautiful riding, assuming the weather. Sure, it should be a great little county if you stuck a roof over her. The weather, I'm not sure if any other, I gotta look at a Joe Rogan podcast, see does he drink water during the podcast, because I get parched when I'm giving these podcasts. That's what some of the pauses are. I guess Joe Rogan's interviewing people, so he's sipping away like a sneaky little fucker when he's interviewing them. So yeah, the Tour de France podcast hasn't really led itself to a lot of guests, but as we go, the daily Tour de France podcast is hard as well. I've done it a couple of years ago with YouTube videos daily. It's a bit of a grind, but I will roll back into more consistent, probably a week or bi-weekly podcasts coming up in the next week. Tour de France is over. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed today's stage. Very formulaic, as we say. Break goes, break comes back, sprinters contest. But Paris as a venue is phenomenal. You know, it's the biggest annual sporting event in the world. They were debating in commentary what's the second biggest. I have no idea. Is it Wimbledon? Is it the golf? I have no idea. But Paris is just such a beautiful scenic backdrop. And watching Bernal standing on the top step of the podium with his girlfriend there, his family there. You got to remember, this is a family, this family hasn't come from Blackrock, they haven't come from affluent suburbs in London or Paris or Munich. They're from Bogota. It's different in Bogota. They're coming from relative poverty from what we're used to here in the West. So this is huge for the village. It's huge for the whole family, and it could set the family up for generations. And you could see the mother was talking yesterday about how they just didn't have enough money to give Egan a proper upbringing. They said it was hard for him, and coming from them, when they say hard, it means different than when we say hard. It's not like hard, like, oh, I didn't get a car until I was 19, it was real hard. Like, it's not like that. So you could see the pride on their faces. He took the top step with the Colombian national anthem and the Arc de Triomphe in the background, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing backdrop. I stuck out, I get kind of random messages on Twitter and Instagram and a couple of emails and stuff, basically kind of like, what have you been up to for the week, or we haven't heard from you from the week. And not so much this week, because obviously you guys have been hearing from me pretty much full gas this week, but in previous weeks I've been quiet if I've been away researching something. I'd get like, what's going on, what are you up to, and I kind of have, I suppose, weird weeks, and it's people are looking for a little bit of an insight into what I'm doing week to week. It's definitely not your typical week that a lot of people would have, so I guess some people are finding it interesting. So I started throwing out a weekly email, like a 5-point bullet point email. I rubbed the idea off Tim Ferriss, actually. He does a 5 bullet point Friday or something. I'm not organised enough to get it out on a Friday, so kind of get it out anywhere between Thursday and Sunday. But I just took 5 kind of topics, and they're the main focus for me for the week, and I pinged them out in an email. So I'm going to just run through some of the ones that I went through this week. So these are things that were on my mind, or I was pondering or contemplating this week. So it's what book was I reading? So I was reading actually Viktor Franklin. If anyone hasn't read it, it's unreal. It's Man's Search for Meaning. It's about a guy who's a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp. It's kind of a what's a meaning of life type book, but it's brilliant, thoroughly enjoyable. I'm a good man for quotes. I enjoy quotes. When I find a quote I like to scribble it down in a journal. I'm constantly scribbling. Journals everywhere. I have about 8 journals. Even if I go into town for the day, I feel the need to bring 2 or 3 journals with me. Different journals for different topics. But I always try and scribble down quotes, and I found a nice Seneca quote this week that I was kind of just wondering about, and I suppose it occupied a bit of free time when I was out on the bike, just letting it sink in and take my meaning for it. So Seneca said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient. For he that is so wants nothing. Enjoyed that quote. Enjoyed it. Best event I attended this week was another. I was at a Wim Hof cold immersion workshop this week. I've a beta group. It's kind of a biohacked cyclist group with a lot of corporate type guys on it. It's a closed group. It's not open for clients, but we experiment with a lot of stuff like cold thermogenesis, controlling blood sugar levels, with strategies like lotus extract, apple cider vinegar, upregulation of GLUT4 transponders. We're mucking about with some photobiomodulation. It's kind of like light therapy and a bunch of crazy wacky stuff like that, which I shouldn't put the title crazy wacky on it because I would have a couple of years ago, but stuff rooted in some cool science now, and it seems to be only the top execs and stuff can afford this. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be a part of that. It's kind of, I guess, the new wave of coaching, which we're definitely enjoying being a part of and leading a lot of the research into it. So that's fun. I've seen Wiggins sauced on the back of the motorbike today, which was really funny. I have a lot of time for Bradley Wiggins. Wiggins, I guess I would have grown up with cycling long before I ever raced a bike. The TV would have been always on in my house with bike races on, and Wiggins just strikes me as that type of character as well. He's an old romantic, the way he sees the bike, the way I seen him, he posted a picture of himself and Vincenzo Nibali yesterday, and he said he was nearly fighting a French fan for Nibali's bottle at the top of was it Valères yesterday, the horse category climb on the shortened stage. Wiggins strikes me as a fan, even though he's a Grand Tour winner. He's a fan almost, and I love that. But today he was on the back of the motorbike and he was going from car to car, and he was getting a glass of champagne nearly off every car. So if you're looking for a bit of entertainment, jump on the Wiggins' Twitter account there and you'll see him completely sauced talking about it. Just how little he's had to eat that day, and how he's a bit of a danger on the back of the bike. I'm sure he'll get he'll probably get, I don't think he'll get sacked from Eurosport for it because he was great value for the whole thing, but you'll definitely get complaints about it. It's promoting irresponsible drinking on the back of the motorbike, yada yada yada. The sterile police. Okay, the podium that we've rounded out with, it's not a podium anyone expected. It's not a podium that even won a stage this year. It's 22-year-old Egan Bernal standing on top, Geraint Thomas in second, and Kruijswijk, the 9th Dutch man to stand on a podium, in third. Sagan, obviously the institution that he is, wrapped up the green jersey competition with 2 Frenchmen standing on the podium. Bardet, who it looked like his tour was over in week 1, so to pull out a King of the Mountains jersey. There was a great tweet this morning from Bardet when he was a kid watching the tour wearing a King of the Mountains jersey. For him to stand on the podium in Paris with a King of the Mountains jersey on, that means something, and it means something for engaging the French fans as well. And we almost couldn't have had a podium. It would have been a different race without the most aggressive rider in the race, Julian Alaphilippe. People like Alaphilippe and Sagan, they're essential for cycling. They're the great characters in cycling, and they're what's going to attract sponsors, they're what's going to attract kids. They're absolutely brilliant, and I'm looking forward to watching them for the next decade. The podium meant something different to everyone. As I said, for Bardet, it's the realisation of a childhood dream. For Bernal, we went through that with the poverty that he's come from, coming up, being identified by Brailsford. He came through an Italian team. Is it Sacchi or something like that? That brought him in an Italian team. And now it's obviously vindication that this is a career for him, that he can make money out of it, that he can support his family out of this, that it means a lot and empowers the whole country as well. I had lunch today with a friend, and his girlfriend's son is Colombian, and straight away, it's a cycling conversation. How many 12-year-old kids you meet in Ireland that it's a cycling conversation straight away? They just love it. It's their football. It's what they do. It's their main sport. Didn't see him 20 seconds till he mentioned the word Quintana. Quintana's his favourite rider. So it's brilliant to see. And then I think Kruijswijk, 32 years old, he controversially, or not more unluckily than controversially, lost the Giro a couple of years ago. He's it's nice for him to stand on the podium. I think a criticism maybe of him was yesterday, criticism leveled by me as much as some of the other media, that he didn't attack. But you got to look. He's on a podium with Egan Bernal. Who knows what Bernal goes on to be? Who knows what Thomas could pull out another 2 or 3 Tour wins. He's on a podium with 2 of the great riders of our generation. If he attacks and he slips down to 4th, that's a different narrative for his kids. It's a different narrative for his grandkids. He can pull out that picture when he's 90 years old and say, I was on the podium with Egan Bernal. Potentially could run on to be one of the greatest riders ever. We don't know yet. That story is still to be written. There was a lot to lose. There was a lot to lose for Kruijswijk by going on the attack. And yeah, I'm glad to see him getting a podium. He's deserved it. He's riding well for a couple of years now. As I said, I was on the hill on Alpe d'Huez last year, and Kruijswijk was out attacking the main GC guys with Bernal on the front of the group, chasing behind through the crowds. And it was great TV. So I'm glad to see the 2 boys again back and animating the race this year. Like, INEOS didn't win a stage this year, and they had Quickstep do almost all of the riding for them. I mentioned it yesterday, the quote from Geraint Thomas just sticks in my head. There's many ways to win the Tour de France. We're used to seeing them on the front, controlling the race day in, day out. They didn't this year. They sat back and they waited. Like, Brian Smith in Eurosport coverage was talking about how they're weak this year. Are they weak, or are they absolutely genius? Because they've wound out 1-2, and they've had Quickstep do the riding for them all week. Like, do they just know the altitude, the high mountains, 3rd week? He can't sustain it. We have more in reserve. We can wait and attack then. So they have Quickstep defend the jersey all through the first 2 weeks. The Sky boys are chilling, and now instead of having one protected rider, it works to go in with a co-leader, as they done with 2 protected riders, and they put the 2 boys on the podium 1-2. I'm not saying it was that tactical and that's how it played out, but it played out. And it's 1-2, and you can't say Brailsford's lucky, because he's just not lucky. It's not luck when you do it every single time. Other teams need to step up. They need to raise their game. Movistar yesterday, we're riding for the team prize. Like, it's a load of shite. Like, they could have won the stage yesterday, and there seems like there's more self-interest in other teams where INEOS never has that. It's the teamwork's fostered over individual expression. Lotto, probably the closest team for me. Lotto had if I was given a roadman of the tour, it would be one of the Lotto guys. It'd probably be the Lotto team if I was to be honest. They were just, did the lead out man Tuniston won a stage, did Groenewegen won a stage, he was second again today. They won the team time trial, did Van Aert win the stage. They were phenomenal. They Kruijswijk on the podium, did a little bit of everything about them, and when you think they've Roglic to come back to that, and Tom Dumoulin going to that team as well, that's what I mean by upping the game. That's what teams are going to need to do. INEOS have set the mark. Other teams need to raise their game, because it's just not washing at the moment, and we're going to see absolute INEOS domination if other teams don't step up. I couldn't help but feel for... I'm going to take one of my little breaks for a sip of water. I couldn't help but feel for Luke Rowe. Seeing the guys arm in arm riding down the Champs-Élysées, Egan Bernal in yellow, Geraint Thomas second, if Catrivieo, Walt Powell's, Dylan Van Baarle, Moscon, I definitely missed someone there, I can't remember who, all riding arm in arm, and Luke Rowe's watching from the sidelines, or at home, I don't know, I didn't see him there, I assume he stuck around. It's got to be hard on him for something as trivial as that head-to-head, tete-a-tete with Tony Martin. I feel for Luke Rowe, I feel for Tony Martin as well, but more so Luke Rowe. Seems a good guy. He seems like a guy that gets his job done. And yeah, it's a tough one. I'm sure he'll go out on the piss with the boys tonight. But I've been that, not in cycling, but I've been that soldier in football back in the day. And you'd be a part of a team all the way up till the quarterfinal and you get an injury or something, and even though you could have been a key player all the way up to the quarterfinal, they go on and win the cup and they're celebrating, and you just don't have the same feeling or attachment as the other guys on the team. So yeah, obviously not comparable winning schoolboy football tournaments versus the Tour de France, but it's the emotion, I'm sure, is very similar. As I said yesterday, we don't have a podcast sponsor, in part because we haven't gone really looking for a podcast sponsor. If one had landed on our lap during the tour, perfect. At some point, I think when we're a bit more established, we'll make a more proactive attempt to attract sponsors. The numbers are good, so thanks for that already. It's humbling to think that people take time out of their day or bring me on their training ride, so that's amazing. So in lieu of a show sponsor, again, I'm going to shill A1 coaching. So I think it's the time of season where you need to double down your efforts. You need to think about building a groundwork for next season. You need to think about, can I add 10, 15 watts? Even if it's not a goal like a race, you got to be thinking, can I add 10, 15 watts onto my threshold? Can I add 200 watts onto my sprint before the end of the season? Because that's going to give you a higher platform to spring from next season. You got to be looking at key performance metrics. You got to be data driven. You got to have someone in the background managing your training stress score. Even me, like I know this stuff. I put together the playbook, but I can't coach myself. You have no objective credibility. I never know when I'm training too hard. I never know when I'm training not enough. So you need that third party to do it. So what we're going to do for listeners is, obviously I said yesterday we're going to give 20% when you mention A1 show on off the first month, but also this week, obviously we can't do this for everyone, but the first 5 people to drop us an email, info@a1coaching.net, we're going to hook up a training call for you. So we're just going to get one of the coaches to give you a buzz, just talk about how your season's going. Absolutely no obligation to sign up for anything. It's literally just a chat. So it'll be myself or one of the other coaches. We're just going to have a chat, see how your season's going, and give you a few pointers. Say, look, you could have done this better. That bike you're using is not right. The nutrition you're using isn't right. Or the way you're preparing for these races isn't right. You guys are putting a lot of time and effort into getting ready for this stuff. 2% extra is going to elicit way, way better results. And it's just small little tweaks. A lot of time we have clients coming into us, we're actually taking down the amount of training hours they're doing. We're just giving them a little bit more structured and a little bit more focused, and the results are insane. Some of the times we can't even post the results. Like some of the results, if we posted client testimonials, people would be like, you're doping them up. It's a systematic dope and US postal style shit going on there. We're sticking 20% on clients' threshold in 8 weeks. Like, it's insane the way, like the corporate group I was talking about that I'm working with at the moment, like the results are just, they'll blow you away. Like, so the weight loss, increase in energy levels, increase in sleep quality, it's baffling stuff. But I'm going to leave the plug there. I'm going to keep doing them plugs, guys. Feel free if you don't like listening to me rant about A1 for the meantime, feel free to just whack the old forward 30-second button on that. I'll try and keep them to sort of 60 seconds max, because I know I listen to the Lance Armstrong podcast and it's littered 8-9 times through it with 2-minute ads. So I'm going to be respectful of your time, and I'm going to keep it to one slot of ad stuff per podcast. I'll generally just throw it in whenever I think about it. When I get a bit more organised, I'll try and lump them all in to start, maybe. The Irish, how did we get on? How did us Irish get on in this fucking Tour de France? I might try and get Neil Martin on during the week. Neil would be a great man to chat to. Neil's an interesting dude. Obviously Dan's interesting cycling career himself, just all around interesting guy. You talk about a man who's figured a lot of shit out living out in Girona. Figured out, he's nearly hacked what it's like to be the perfect retired, semi-retired life. He's figured out a lot of shit. He's a good man, so I'd love to get him on for a bit of a chat. So if you're listening there, Neil, that's a shout out to you. So hit me up and we'll hook that up. Dan was, look, you couldn't help but say Dan was disappointed, and he was disappointed, I'm sure, in his own performance as well. So he said there yesterday, he said it's been a bit strange really. Obviously I came in with excellent condition and for whatever reason it just didn't happen. I think the team's got to look at why that performance wasn't there, but obviously today it was nice to finish on what was probably one of my best days of the race. We'll go forward with that. I had the condition, but there was just something blocking me, and that's what's frustrating, he said. I came in with excellent condition, but that's just the way it is. My body emptied and I had no power in the finishes. Every day I was in the mountains and I was in the break, I was feeling good, and then suddenly the lights went out. All very mysterious. It kind of sounds like Dan's alluding to something that the team is doing that's not working for him, whether it's a nutrition provider, whether it's something logistical that's affecting his sleep. I've no idea, but it sounds like something that's out of Dan's control and within the team's control, which is quite odd. But it's Dan's a consummate professional. He wasn't pointing fingers at anything. Maybe it's equipment. I don't know. I've no idea. It seems like we probably won't ever know. It's probably a change that's going to get made internally. Dan had a disappointing tour. Nico had quite a good tour, I thought. He was a little bit off. He was a little bit off the pace. He was again bringing Matthews back today, which was cool. He was a little bit off the pace in the final, but he was great to watch. He got into breaks and you couldn't fault him for honesty of effort, and he could slap off the deck on the first Alpine stages as well. So good to see him making Paris. Another guy who's been a guest on the A1 show before, so we'd love to get him back at some point, maybe in the next week if I can snag it and have a chat how the tour went for him. The other one, Chris Jensen, yeah, he had a great tour. Every day work, and how many stage wins did the boys win? Trentin, was it 2 or 3 for Yates? I can't remember. And then they had the South African Impy. I'm going to say 5 stage wins. Could have been 4. Yeah, it could have been 4. It's 4 or 5 stage wins for Mitchelton Scott. So that's an epic. It's an epic Tour de France, considering they went in with GC hopes for Yates and that didn't pan out, and they had to pivot. Their director White must be absolutely delighted with that, because it's a proper Tour de France. It's one of the most successful ones, I'd say. We're looking at, obviously INEOS, Lotto, Mitchelton Stott as the podium of successful Tour de France teams this year. Will we see a Colombian team in the next few years? There's a lot of good Colombians out there at the moment. I think yesterday I said Carapaz is Colombian. I think he's Ecuadorian. But we've obviously Quintana, we've Bernal, we've Gaviria, we've Rigoberto Urán. There's a lot of Colombians out there. I don't know what the course is like for the Olympics in Tokyo, but you've got to think Colombia is a favourite to be winning out there. It's a super strong team at the moment. I'd love to see a Colombian World Tour team. I think Colombians have been around for years. Back in the 80s, when Kelly was racing, they were talking about Colombians breaking through and winning tours, and they were always great climbers, but I think they had a bad rep back in the day for crashing on the scents. They seem to have shaken that rat. Bernal's a good bike handler. He was second, I think, in the U23 World Mountain Bike Championship, so he's well able to handle his bike. I'd love to see a Colombian cycling team. I don't think it's going to be that long till we see one. It's a great little carrot on the end of the stick for any young lad in Colombia, knowing there's a development team there straight away. Rather than Bernal's pathway was over to Italy and then to INEOS, imagine having that nice stepping stone of a Colombian team, because it's difficult to go from Colombia into an Italian team. Culturally it's difficult. It's for a young kid going a long way from home. It's difficult. Foods are difficult. It's hard, and I'd say it was a lot of kids through the cracks with that type of logistical, just mental anguish and torture. I know as I'd graduated from college when I went over to France, and going over there racing as an amateur was still real hard. Going over and not having the language, different food, away from my friends, family, it's hard. So I'd love to see a Colombian cycling team in the next few years. Also, how shit do I feel about my linguistic skills watching 22-year-old Egan Bernal on the podium. Not only is he the best cyclist in the world, he gives his victory speech in 4 different languages. What the fuck? He thanked them in French, Italian, English, and in Spanish. The lad's a rock star. So that's unbelievable. I think a lot of attention today goes on the guys who are standing on the podium with their hands in the air, especially the guy with the big lion and the yellow jersey that we've talked about so much. But the sacrifice it takes to finish the Tour de France is phenomenal. You're talking 365, 24/7. These guys are switched on. It affects every relationship they have. It affects every travel choice they have. It affects every food choice they have. It affects every aspect of their life, from what time they go to bed at, to what time they wake up at, to how much they're hydrating, to how much they're training. It can't be overemphasized how all-encompassing being a cycling pro is. When you contrast it to, a football pro, tennis pro, golf pro, it's just so full on. So anyone who gets to that level, it's just the ultimate in sacrifice, and it's an obvious, the opportunity cost is so high for some of the guys, and for like the cost benefit analysis, I suppose, for Bernal, guys that we know their names, your Caleb Ewans, your Bernals, your Bling Matthews, the benefit they're getting is huge out of huge contracts, huge publicity, potentially media careers after, sponsorship, endorsement, they're celebrities, and huge paychecks, and they're foregoing obviously a career. They could be doing something else, but it's well worth it because of the financial and financial rewards they're getting off it. But some of the guys at the back of the peloton, the guys who you're seeing riding on the front every day into the wind, some of these guys aren't getting huge salaries. I think, was it Carapaz won the Giro d'Italia and he was on 55,000 a year, I think, something around that. Don't quote me on that figure, but it wasn't over 70k as far as I remember, and he won the Giro d'Italia. He was the winner of the Giro d'Italia. So think what some of the domestiques are making, 35, 40k a year. They're putting their life on the line every day. They're putting their body on the line every day. They're doing long-term damage to their body with some of the racing they have to go through, racing sick, racing injured. It's a difficult sport. So to those guys, to the guys at the back of the peloton, that's who I want to give the Roadman Award today. So thank you for just making the last 3 weeks possible. They're the guys who are they're facilitating the great champions. Sometimes they're doing the work before we even come on air. They're ferrying the bottles up. They're keeping the team leaders warm. They're keeping them sheltered. They're keeping them motivated. They're bringing them back from crashes. They're giving them their bikes. They're helping them out after the stage with little bits and pieces. They're the guys I want to tip my hat to, the roadmen. And I think it's a nice place to leave it for today. I think I'm touching after 11 o'clock here because of the late stage finish. I'm sure in Paris the guys are about to just wind up the after party and get stuck into it. But for me, I'm about to stick on the pajamas and do my final piece of editing to get this out to you guys immediately so you can listen to it tomorrow. And this concludes our A1 Tour de France podcast. I'll be back next week. I'll start confirming, check out our social, and I'll confirm times and days that we'll be back. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into some of the more substantive training topics as we go. So if you have any requests for what you'd like me to talk about, guests you'd like me to interview, keep that sort of stuff coming. So for me, bonne nuit et viva la Tour, the 100th anniversary of the yellow jersey. It's been taken by a Colombian, Egan Bernal. He'll go down in the history books. Thanks for tuning in, and chat to you soon.